So thank you for taking the time today to talk about our County Observer Corps. Many of you have already heard about it, probably learned different things and been involved. I know I have pictures of Thana here coming up in our Dakota County world, but I wanted to do a little deeper dive into just the whole concept too of observing, because I think a lot of times people think about it as sort of a passive word. But if ever there was a more important time to be an observer, it is right now in our democracy for many reasons. So we're going to do a little background, and I also hope this could help you, and this video could help you in your local leagues to recruit people to be more active observers in their community, to see the value it brings and the importance right now in our democracy. So I am going to share my screen and get my slides going here. All right, slideshow. I want to view slideshow. So I can't see everybody. So and we're a small group. You can also just go hello. But otherwise, if you put your name in the chat, I'll stop every once in a while for questions. But feel free to put that in the chat, or just raise your hand, shout out, and we'll go from there. So. All right, so January Jumpstart, if you haven't been a part of these, again, we're trying to do more focused times each year through January Jumpstart and our August Academy to help league leaders orient them to their roles and be able to answer all those questions you have. So hopefully by doing these two times a year trainings, we're able to better support you all in your local communities. So I wanted to start a little bit with observing. So here is the definition of observing, but I wanted to point some of these things out because it really is about what we're doing right now. The ones I put in bold, that observing is just, we think of the things like watching or, but to watch carefully, right? The idea of observing, watch carefully, especially with attention to details for the purpose of arriving at a judgment. I mean, that is really part of the word, right? It's not just seeing it, but it's also seeing it in a way that will help us make better decisions, which we'll talk about when it comes to post-election audit reviews. Then, or to make a scientific observation that based on this observation, we see X, Y, Z. To come to realize or know, especially through consideration of something, that we really can't know about something unless we're really looking at the details of it, right? Which is really center point. Oops, sorry about that. Is really center point to league. I mean, league is really about really knowing our issues. And then I like this other one, to utter as a remark, because observing also is about sharing that observation, to be able to share out what you've observed. So this is just a kind of a good reminder of the importance of what observing can do. So one of the first things I wanted to talk about was, again, the more intense observation we did this year as part of the post-election review. And the Citizens for Election Integrity Minnesota, as many of you know, has been around since 2000 with the sole purpose of observing post-election reviews after elections. The idea being that if we're going to do this review and hand count all of these, that it's good to have more people in the room observing the process. What it does is give us more witnesses, right? More people who have seen and can bring judgment to what they've seen. So this year it was great to partner with Mark Halverson, and we'll have Sam talk more about that. I mean, it was a terrific group with Citizens for Election Integrity, but also the League of Women Voters to really, this year we did 11 counties, which were some of the counties where some of the election deniers had been hanging out, wanting to make sure that we had good evidence, right? That observing is a process of collecting evidence in case there would be lawsuits in the counties. And of course, what we found was everything was accurate, right? So we have more people who have seen that and been able to be a witness to that. And like we say, observing matters. So, Dakota County on the upper left there, and Olmsted County on the lower right. And I will say, in talking with Tom Novak in Dakota County, um, he was saying that at their post-election review, there were some of the election deniers there who did tell him afterwards, well, this was really good to see this. I do see that this went well. It doesn't mean we change their mind forever, right? But the power of observing and being able for people to see how the process works, which is transparency in government, made a really big difference. And we know it can change people. So that is very exciting. And before we go on to that, I'm going to stop and share just briefly and ask Sam if you want to say any more. And also, Thana, you were active in that. I don't know if any others of you were, but maybe Thana, you could talk first about your experience with Dakota County and what you thought of that post-election review.
What I thought, I was very glad to see it. Like you said, Mark Halverson had heard kind of the similar feedback from the election denier groups that were there. Well, I still think there's election fraud going on, but it's not here.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
and just how tedious and all it was, and how well it was run. I was glad to see it.
Great. Cindy, were you a part of it too, or? Thank you. Getting your mic on.
There we go. Yes, in LaSource County. And we have an amazing elections officer in Carol Blaschko. And she, I got to know her actually for a couple of other reasons over the last couple of years. But when I was an election judge this year, I know that the person who is our lead at the polls said, we've got to get it right because Carol doesn't take anything less than perfect. And so she did an amazing job. Everything was impeccable. And we had two individuals from a group in southern Minnesota that's kind of gotten organized and is especially concerned about mail-in ballots. And so they were there to observe, and I chatted with them just briefly beforehand, and they expressed their concerns. And I said, well, this is a great opportunity to learn about the process. And then I showed them my post-election review guide that I printed from the Secretary of State's office. And I said, hey, did you get a copy of this, or do you know about this? And they didn't have any idea. So I encouraged them to look at the Secretary of State's website. And I said, yeah, this has, it's really detailed, explains the process and all the protocols. And I said, it's really quite impressive. And one of the women said, well, I just wish it were simpler. And I said, well, but we have to get it right, don't we? And they said, well, yeah. And then throughout the process, they started chatting with each other, and they looked confused, and they were looking at their materials. We had the machine count, so we were able to listen to what the counters were doing to see if it was verified. And they were sort of confused. So I just kind of went over there very quietly, and I said, I have this on my computer, so why don't you just take this guide with you, and I can easily print another one. And they said, thank you. So It was good. It was very good.
Wonderful. Well, and for the people who've just joined us, we did a little definition of observing, but we're starting with the observation of the post-election review. And what I wanted to point out there is that, we were in 11 counties, and we were in the counties that had some of the most tension. The post-election review itself, of course, is an observation itself, right, of the ballots. Was everything here, what it should be? And when the election, when the results of the election came and there was no stop the steal, I really have to say, you know, we were part of that. All of the people in the post-election review process, by being able to have that witness to what it is like to see that, to realize that that isn't happening here, so maybe I'm not so sure, is its own powerful way of being advocates for how we know the election is fair and accurate. And so it's sometimes a quieter way, but it's also a more substantive way of being able to bring the naysayers, so to speak, or the people who maybe don't have the information. And that's what we see a lot. I would say the number one reality of observing is also, by observing, being a witness, is to educate, right? People to realize the information that's there. And we'll talk more about that. So thank you so much for sharing, you guys, your experiences there. And all right, I'm gonna get my Zoom back here. Okay, so observing matters, right? It did matter, it does matter, and we're gonna continue to talk about why we have to keep going on. So why do we need a county observer corps? And I think we've seen it now with the growth of what has happened with folks not believing our elections are fair and accurate, is people don't understand our elections. So that's first and foremost. And one of the, certainly the biggest thing that we did last year also was start our new website, Elections 411. And this is something we really do want to oh, great. Something we really do want to share and continue to share and use in our leagues. In this website, what we did was use a webinar from 2021 where we interviewed 8 different election officials, and we got all the good news about, okay, what are all the safeguards built in? So on this website, if you hadn't had a chance to look at it, we actually put this in our signatures now. I'm going to put this on our business cards as just a great way to send people to learn about it. We talked about, we do kind of a quick read here as to the top stuff that's important about the safeguards, but then we also have learn more, right? You can learn more. We continually go back also to the audit from 2018. The voting registration audit from 2018 was actually called upon by the legislative auditors at the demand of Mary Kiffmeyer. And at the time, people thought they were going to find a lot of, you know, problems and fraud within the system, and they did not. So it's a great tool and resource, and it's one that we really brought to bear in the counties. And so as we talk about the County Observer Corps, a lot of our work was also just educating the county commissioners themselves about the resources that are there. And that was really powerful to us in the letters that we did. We, if you look down at the bottom, we started this replace false claims. So we would go before some of these county commissioners and say, you know, you don't need to just rely on Rick Weibel's computer. You have a lot of other sources, including your own post-election review. And then we gave them all these articles from, you know, and studies from you know, Republicans and Democrats that showed the elections were fair and accurate. So this has become a real powerful site for us. And one of the things that we want our County Observer Corps to help us get this information out there. So kind of the who, what, where, when, why of we doing this. Certainly why is really people don't understand how it all works, and we want to be a witness for that. And what's important to say is it's not about saying people are bad and wrong. We don't need to. We can continue to lead with good, strong, important information. And that is very, it is a very powerful tool, especially with county commissioners. We have found it's not always about being the loudest in the room and having placards and making demands. It's about, not that those things aren't important, but against that sort of noise that they were feeling, us coming up with the real facts and education was very powerful to them. So the who we're trying to deal with here is the conspiracy groups. They can engage citizens and try to influence our officials. So we are targeting and understanding that we want to be here to be able to overcome those groups. Even if they're not there yet, we know that we expect there to be a bigger groundswell in 2024. So we are also trying to do some prevention here. So the what is we want to be present, observing, asking questions, and building relationships with election officials and county staff. Where we want to be in all 87, we have been most present in the last year in the 11 target county areas, some of them listed here, but we want to be able to reach out to all 87. We are in a good spot right now because, of course, we'll have elections in 2023 in local elections, which will help us get some people out of the gate and learning, but we have some time to be prepared. And so what I talk about it is then the league way is to build an observer corps. Some of you have observer corps in your local leagues. We have a state observer corps as part of our legislative session now. And observing is a lot of that, right? So this is an article from the Star Tribune featuring Rick Weibels and sort of the Minnesota Patriots Midwest Swamp Watch group. And again, they were just, again, by observing what was going on, they would be there, they'd be at these meetings. And so we need to do the same, right? So, credit to them, they're getting involved. We never said that them being there was a problem. It's the right of all citizens to come forward and be active in their governance. But it just means we need to also be a part of that observation. Of course, educating is the other big piece of what we want to do. I showed you the election 411 site. We want to get more articles like this out there, more letters to the editor, that we would work with you all in your local communities where we can give you information to get that information out there. This is one article that was written about us that we use. But that education aspect is also very important. And also continuing to communicate the key messages. This was one of our commentaries that happened right before the election. And this was actually on the first day or right around the first day of early voting. And when we wrote this one, again, if you look at our messaging, it's always this one. We were really promoting Vote 411, but we were talking to candidates, we're talking to voters, what their role is, and our county officials, and we were able to get our election 411 web page out there. So that was great, and again, something we want to continue to do. And lastly, being visible, right? Just being out in the community, being involved at meetings. This is just a snapshot of some of the articles that were written after the post-election review. Imagine then when you look at all this, thousands of people, it wasn't just the people in the room, but thousands of people got the message that our elections were fair and accurate. And that's ultimately really what we're excited about doing. Okay, before we go on to the Observer Corps, I want to just also see if anybody else was involved in our post-election review and had any stories to share, because I think, Carolyn, were you also involved in Nicollet County?
I was in Nicollet County, yeah. It was, I mean, it was a pretty much of a non-event, I think, in terms of they just ran it really really well.
Mm-hmm.
And there were 3 people, I don't know what group they were from, but they were kind of hovering and looking at everything. But I had another League of Women Voters member with me, and we just observed everything, and it was very informative also. I'll do it again. I'll do it every year. Yeah.
That's great. Anybody else want to share? Yeah, Ralph.
Yeah, I actually had the opportunity to be an observer for both Stearns and Sherburne County on 2 different days. And in both cases, there were election deniers there. They had different ways of dealing with things, but in both cases, the county auditors were very cordial and disciplined and were able to answer their questions and try to make things very informative and also accurate. And I think it went very well in both cases. Randy Schreifels was in Stearns County was especially good. Near the end, there was one precinct with one pile of ballots where they were off by one vote. And this whole group of people descended on it to recount everything. And they found the one ballot, and Randy Schreifels brought it over and showed it to us as observers and see, this is why we have a problem. You know, this person had marked big X's instead of filling in the little circles that you learn how to do in kindergarten, you know, when you do multiple choice tests. And so it was interesting. And the election deniers were most present in Sherburne County, and Diane Arnold handled that very well.
Mhm.
So
Great. Well, and a lot of it too, what we'll talk about is we want to, you know, people like Diane Arnold, all the people you're talking about, the great election officials, we want to keep in touch with them and know that we're there to support them. And what we've also found in supporting them is not going into the county without their knowledge ahead of time as well. You know, there have been some other groups that, you know, who share our passion for accuracy and voting and voter rights, but to just go and be, you know, and demonstrate, sometimes we've heard from a lot of the county officials, they're like, you know, they're balancing that out, right? We want to be able to be that credible source for our commissioners. So we really want to be that and help them do that. I think a lot about Y2K. If you remember, all of us here, Sam, you don't remember Y2K, but the rest of us remember. And remember all the work, like, oh my gosh, the sky is going to fall. And then, you know, then 2000 rolled over, and there were all these people who said, well, see, nothing happened. It was like, that's because we prepared, right? Preparation matters. And I think that's what we're trying to say here about elections. Sorry, it's boring, but it's absolutely because it is so disciplined and organized as a process that it works so well, and being able to continue to share that message. So, okay, great. All right, let's go back to my little screen here. Pull up all right, so with our County Observer Corps, right now we have about 35 people, which is awesome, representing 15 leagues from Rochester to Duluth, who have volunteered to participate in the Observer Corps. We are, you know, we kind of went right from the election, quite literally, you know, 3 weeks later, we were at a 2-day retreat getting ready for this legislative session because of the opportunities we have in front of us. So we haven't been able to launch our County Observer Corps process completely yet, but the post-election review came right away after that. So we will be working, though, this winter to start to get underway. But our goal is, again, to have all 87 counties represented, even if there are people, like, let's say if I'm not looking at a map, but let's say you're in Nicollet County and you have 3 people, and you don't need 3 people in Nicollet, but maybe somebody would be willing to meet the election director, you know, in the official in the next county, and build that relationship. So we also are looking at building more of those sorts of relationships with other groups, which we'll talk about, that can help us do this. We don't have to do this all alone. So again, we want to empower our local leagues to support those officials, to counter misinformation. We want to also share our election forum one page. The Secretary of State has new resources as well. and do more events with partners. It's an opportunity. We are networking with AAUW, the American Association of University Women. They have chapters all over the state. They're very interested in participating in this with us. I've met the chapter, the state director for AARP. And we have, so we have some statewide groups and you may have groups in your own local leagues that would want to be a part of this as well. What we want to do is be able to, again, give you letters to the editors that you could publish or send out. So Forum Communications is one company that partners with us in Election 411, and they have newspapers in 14 of our league areas all around greater Minnesota, and are very, very open to publishing things if we produce them for them. So that's great. We want to recruit those volunteers, right? Reach out. We're trying to reach out to folks like we are here today, hoping our advocacy chairs, our presidents, we can find more people and those partners. Like I said, we're really trying to build this space and create a space where we can have everyone represented and have some regular meetings. And part of that is getting to know what's ahead. We did not know about Rick Weibel until too late in the game. It just hadn't been on our radar either. But now we know, and we want to be more powerful observers. So part one, of course, of the Observer Corps then, is just as we've been talking about, has been this involvement in and continuing the involvement in the post-election review. We will continue to be a really good partner and ally, and I think it's a great way to continue to recruit other observers who maybe aren't, where we don't have leagues, but also hopefully find people who are interested in this and maybe be able to grow and strengthen our leagues as well through this process. Part two, then, as we talked about, is we will be hosting an orientation in this winter for people, our 35 people and whoever else signs up, and start to get folks aligned with their election official, introducing yourself, or if you don't already know them. And then we will have good resources for you in terms of, we'll set up a new webpage for this and have letters to the editor that you can do, help show you how to find out about your county meetings. Sam has already started here, just to give you a little insight into, some of the things we're working on, where we'll give you some good outlines of how to, what kind of questions to ask, how to be successful as an Observer Corps member. So we'll be setting all that up for you. And then reporting back to us what you're learning, of course, will be a big part of this as well. I wanted to give an example too of what observing, and most of this really is about, if you're having a county meeting, like what I would envision, let's just take Diane Arnold in Sherburne County. So it's like, hey, Diana, is there anything coming up on the docket, with the commissions? What are you thinking? And she's like, oh, we're going to have a big meeting on new statute or something. So we want to be there then, right? You could mobilize your league or mobilize other people, come to us and let us know if you need help. And then we want people to observe those meetings and report back. So this is an example from our recent Capitol letter, our Observer Corps that we have going for the state legislature. There's also, I put a link here. We have our Capitol letters have started now. We send those out, but they're also on our website under our blog. And we put our observer reports in. But this gives you a nice example of really what we're looking at, and what we need. It's not like you have to take notes on a county meeting, right? But Rebecca Munson did this. This was on, actually, this was, I didn't put what this is. Let's see. Oh yeah, this is Senate file. This is one, the abortion bill is what this is. House File, Senate File 1. So she just wrote, and I just put in bold some of the things to talk about. It was passed and referred to the Senate floor. Like, well, that's great, right? That's a quick way to know, okay, this was passed. It's great to know, oh, who else was there? Okay, gender justice. Oh, who, who were the testifiers? That's good to know. Also, here's a key question: amendments that were offered. That's a great thing to know in this case. Concerned about what science will bring forward in the future. Like, oh, that's really good information about, oh, interesting. And then saying who sort of repeatedly questioned the bill. So like if you read this little bit, right, not all people don't have time, right? We're following a lot of bills right now. We don't all have time to read all the bills and go to all the hearings. It's the same thing. We have 87 counties. We'll never be able to follow every single thing. But what our observers can do is very quickly, in a nutshell, say, here's what it is. And we could look and say, wow, that's great. Senator Howe, we want to keep this information on that senator in this case. And that's what's so helpful, because as we get to know, especially the county commissioners themselves, and finding out, are there people who are believing this or people who are more supportive? Knowing who our legislators are, we learn that through, just having these conversations and doing the learning. So this is a great example, I think, of what can happen with really strong and powerful observing. So our bottom line, and then we'll talk a little bit more here, is we really want to build these relationships with our counties to be active by November 2023. So the 2024 presidential primary, right? It's hard to imagine, but here we are in February. Really, the presidential race starts in a year. I mean, actually, I think right, because it'll be in January. Early voting will start for the presidential primary in March. So it's gonna come, right? And there are so it's gonna get hot here. We look at it as saying, it could be 4 to 6 hours a month. It could be 1 hour a month. It could be, I'm willing to talk to my election official once a month and just keep you in the loop. So, if we don't want time to be a barrier, if somebody only has 1 hour to give, we can make that work. But this is in general what we're asking people for. And it's exciting to think. I think what I'm excited about is being able to bring people together when we bring all 87 counties together, to hear the power of our witness out there. We want to get more letters to the editor out there about how our elections are fair and accurate, start to see the ground. I always say we prevent weeds by strong, better soil. So we want to start putting better information out there sooner. We also, where people are interested, Sam and I are ready to get in the van and go wherever, right? To do training or events with communities to illustrate security of current elections. So if any of you have Rotary clubs, VFWs, places where, we could go. This is a really huge thing because your community. So an example would be Sam and I went up to visit Park Rapids, and they have when you drive into all these little towns, you have the little sign. By the sign, it'll say, we have Kiwanis here, or Lions here, and the Rotary. So we were talking to our league members in Park Rapids, and one of them is in leadership of the Rotary. And we're like, well, let us come and talk to the Rotary, because we want to start talking to those other groups that are, perhaps more diverse in thought, and be able to lay that groundwork about our elections. I think the presidential primary gives us a really good opportunity for that as well, because it's new. People don't really understand it. So we can work with your communities to do some of that outreach with you. Connecting with more partners again, you will probably have other people that you work with. An example, I'm going to use Park Rapids again. In one visit, we found one of the league members works at White Earth Nation. And so we're like, well, we would love to see how we can better support the elections within our Native communities. So she sent an email on, and then I got an email from Winona LaDuke, and I'm going to go visit her in February, which feels just a little, you know, it's like, oh my goodness. But the point is, it all came from league members, right? Our league members know people, they're doing things in communities. And I am constantly reminded how connected we are, but we're not always taking great advantage, right, of all those connections. So we want to be able to take better advantage of all the great relationships you have in your local communities to lay a better groundwork for the elections to come. And then, of course, regularly reporting on results and timely events to us, keeping us in the loop. It's a big effort. There's no doubt about that. But I don't want to dissuade people from thinking, well, this is too big of a deal. It can be a simple deal too. It all starts with a simple deal, right? So just going to the post-election reviews. Now we know more. I mean, just the information shared today, Ralph's like, this is what happened. These are, you know, we're able to now, you know, go to Sherburne and go to Stearns with relationships, and being able to look ahead at how we can better prepare our communities for the presidential election. So I've talked a lot, lots there, but how about some questions? What are you thinking about? Or any concerns in your local areas? Is this something you feel you've got some members who might be willing to participate in? And you can just go ahead and talk if you want to open up your mic and say anything.
Well, I don't. First, Carolyn, you go, and I'll also add some things at the end here.
Thanks, Sam.
I was just wondering about particularly more of the outlying counties where there are not local leagues. How do we reach? I'm thinking about like here, even like there's Sibley County, and we don't have any members from Sibley County in our local league, but it's an adjacent county. And so, you know, how do we reach out to them also, even if we're not living in that county?
Right. Well, one of the things is what's great for us, gives us a starting point. When we put all of your locations on a map, Sam and I, and look, oh, Carolyn, if she's by Nicollet County, why don't we ask Carolyn? And we can also look at the surrounding counties. Are there other groups? That's where our partners come in. We also have supporters. We have people who subscribe. I mean, we have 2,300 members, but we have 4,300 Facebook followers, and we have other people who donate from lots of donors, who don't, live in a league territory. And then we have partners like Minnesota Clean Elections, ACLU, AAUW, and others who have chapters. So we can go to them to say, gosh, we're really out of, we're looking at, does anyone have any contacts at these areas?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, what we're willing to do is be the convener as the League of Women Voters. But we know that we'll need to do this with partners.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. Ralph, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, one of the challenges for those of us in outlying areas is the demise of local newspapers. Yeah. The St. Cloud Times has been around for 100 years, and they stopped delivering home service last October. Fortunately, it was after we had done our candidate forums, because they had great coverage of that, but they fired almost all of their staff. They're down from 40 reporters down to 2. I mean, and so it's a shell of itself. Yeah. And the other surrounding communities too have, newspapers that may come out, if at all, once a month maybe. And so we have to do things on social media, which is great if we had more expertise on that. And also, of course, that's one where people have to opt in and they have to know about us. And so we need to have more partners. But that is a challenge for us.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point. And, something for us in terms of visibility, again, it's that the challenge of looking at, other places, right? One of the opportunities we've also looked at is with cities and counties themselves. The counties, almost everybody sends out information to their constituents, right? To the members, right? So that would be another great thing to find out. What are some of the other public communication vehicles where we might be able to sort of be a barnacle on or be a part of? And we could ask the counties, hey, would you be willing to do a little article on the post-election reviews, right? Like those would be great communication vehicles that we might be able to latch onto. We also have developed a really good connection with the associations here for the Association of Counties. Sam and I met with their lobbyist last week or week, whenever was that, last week, just last week. Association of Cities, Association of School Boards, and Association of Townships. Those associations share our point of view on this, and they share the approach. I mean, of course, they're looking at all counties and all cities and all people, and there are, it's a nonpartisan, way of looking at things. And so, that's where I think but they said to us, hey, we really wish you would do more candidate forums in some of the greater Minnesota area because we don't have local newspapers to tell voters about who some of these candidates are. And we know there's a lot of candidates running who are not interested in governing, but are, sort of pet peeve candidates, right? So I think we have I'm glad you brought that up, Ralph, because I think that's something for us to remember and another asset for us. If we went forward with, and even talking to the Association of Counties to say, hey, what if we prepared some information that all counties could start to put in their communication to constituents? We are still seen as, I think we're as nonpartisan as they come in terms of groups, right? I think for the most part, we're still always challenged by our points of view, even though our points of view have not changed for the most part in 50 years, right? But I think we still have a lot of credibility and still in a lot of communities. And so maybe we could use some of those formal channels. So that would be good.
Michelle?
Yeah.
I really like that idea. Living in LaSoure County, we have not a very good system of getting out information to various groups about candidates. And for example, just a school district, Cleveland School District, has had a couple of bond referendums. They've had school board elections. And the last two election cycles, I looked all over to try to find out information about especially the school board candidates, and there wasn't any available anywhere. And I finally called the superintendent and I said, can you guide me to where I might find out something about the candidates? And he said he didn't know. And I said, well, he said he assumed people knew these people on the ballot. And I said, well, I don't know them, and I don't think I'm alone. So I think working through the Association of Counties would be really helpful for rural communities.
I think that's great. Yeah, I think that's something we should look at. I mean, it was nice that they reached out to us to figure out how to, and again, if we can easily produce, things like even having Vote 411 that they can just put forward. But with candidate forums, we've also said, we're looking at, could we create some mobile teams of candidate forums that would be a good time this year with some of the local races where we don't have as many, our moderators and candidate forum teams are not as busy, to see and try that out where we could send some out. But what we said to them is what we need from you all is arrangements, right? If we're going to go into, Iceni County or somewhere where we don't have maybe we could send people, but we need you to promote it and host the site and provide the security. And, that's what can take a lot out of our leagues, right? Is all those facility arrangements. So, but being able to do some information for them that, is just factual, I think we could get some of those sort of, kind of template things that maybe counties could use, which would be great.
And I know Nicollet County has a quarterly newsletter that they send out by mail to everyone.
Yeah.
And so something like that would be a really good, to even just have a little article or something in there about the election process and things
Right.
like that. So a lot, I would say most of the outlying precincts are and townships do 100% mail.
Yeah.
So something in there about the mail voting process, I
Mhm.
think to perhaps assuage the worries that people have about it.
Mhm. I think I love that idea. And also we've talked about like meet an election judge. Maybe if we gave them some ideas to see how they're normal people in your communities.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this would be great, good stuff that we can try to work through the associations to sort of sanction, right, and give some boilerplate to the counties, cities as well, and school boards to be able to share out in their communities in lieu of that. Indeed, we in our Woodbury, Cottage Grove area as well, we're 90,000 in Woodbury alone, and we lost our paper. So it is a weird thing. So it's like, well, now what do you do? So yeah.
Cindy, you're in a mail ballot only township. Do you even with that, you still have to have the witness, right? On your mail ballot or not?
We did this last time, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know that was something up at the state legislature they were talking about, the witness. So
yeah.
Unfortunately, we don't all have the Mankato Free Press like Linda. Linda's great at, I mean, whatever we give Mankato Free Press, they're really good at covering us. And Linda's great at getting stuff in front of them. And so it's great.
Mm-hmm.
Are there,
Sam,
it
is right here.
Oh, there we go. Excellent.
Yeah, you had this on a slide, Michelle, which I recommend, everyone look over. Again, the really good slides covering all our plan up to this point. These are questions that I think we're wondering about too. How do we cover all 87 counties where we don't have leagues? And thank you all for being involved in the post-election review. Most of you here, or are just, have been on these calls and have been paying attention and getting your league members involved. But the thing I want to say is at the legislator we're working with, We Choose Us to expand democracy. And so some of these things that we're implementing, such as like, I don't know, permanent there are plenty of proposals that we're working on right now, but the thing is that what we're doing is so important with the County Observer Corps because, this is going to continue after the legislative session. Like this is going to be the most important thing that we can do again as advocates at the league and all the way up until 2024. And we're with Citizens for Election Integrity Minnesota, we're working with a nonpartisan partner who advocates for free and fair elections just like we do. So we're making sure that we continue to have those good relationships around some of these core values of democracy and making sure that we get the word out and educate and this. I'm really happy about this group that is going to continue working, and I think it's the main core of the league's mission.
And you might have, when you think about those counties too, think outside the box. Like I have like Pine County and Carlton County where my parents grew up and we had a cabin, and well, I know people up there. I'm like, I could reach out to, so, we could also find some people who are willing to be observers who aren't league members who, will start to learn themselves the value of this process. So we're determined to get to all 87, doggone it. So we thank you so much. We're on our way. I mean, having 35 to start and, 15 counties, we're on our way. We got a lot of work to do, but I want to thank you all for being fabulous in your work in the local leagues. Do any of you have observer corps or any final questions or comments? Do you do local observing at all? Yeah, Thana.
I guess a problem and a solution. One of the things we really want to follow is because when everything gets to the county level, at the county board meetings, things are decided. And so Dakota County, things that might be discussed at their government committee of the whole, those are not recorded or streamed in Dakota County. And so we have talked to one of the county commissioners that's pushing to change that as well. That was part of the CMAL study on the county government.
Yeah.
To advocate for that. So at least we know they're trying. And then we have set up a time or set up invites where we will have at least one of the county commissioners come to our leadership team meeting to talk about their legislative platform for what their what the county's legislative priorities are. And so that, what can we do to maybe follow those bills or, know what those priorities are for the county. And just trying to build that relationship now that we will have a new county elections director coming forward. So trying to build the bridges so that we have more of a relationship, a positive, supportive relationship with the county.
That's great. Yeah, we lost your rock star, Andy Loken. Of course, you still have Lori Alberson, who said great.
Yep. And we've got another commissioner that we're becoming more visible with and is so a relationship with.
But great insights there too, that you're exactly right. Part of it is finding out where are the conversations happening. A lot of times by the time they get to the county commission board meeting, things have already happened. So it's a really good point. But I love the idea of asking them in. I think for league as a whole, I see our role in just local governance continuing to expand. I mean, just even in terms of voting, right? Where if automatic voter registration passes, which is really highly likely, I mean, it's very exciting. But that's like, I think Secretary Simon thought that's about 450,000 new, people automatically registered to vote, right? And the opportunity we have too is to talk about it, integrity. There's no better way to, people when they're already validating their ID, right? The whole point of automatic voter registration is you've already made some other, proof of your identification because you're getting public assistance or you're getting a driver's license or a fishing license. You've had to prove you are who you are. So people should be thrilled, right? So for them, it's a really good message, and it'll be a big message for us to share out. And probably a good opportunity, Sam, I'm looking at you to help remind me, but a really good opportunity for us to maybe communicate with the counties once these things pass, because it's going to be a lot of information, a lot of change coming down to talk about, but maybe we could help with that. And it's good information for people who care about election integrity as well. But it also shifts our focus sometimes of not always having to be registering as many voters, but to be able to work on projects like this, which is how to better, support our voters, better be able to protect the integrity of our elections and all those good things. So lots to happen, and increasing the voter turnout, in these local elections, right? Where, maybe 5, 9, 10, 20%. Even in the midterm, we were at the top, but that's 68%. So getting out the vote is certainly going to continue to be high on our priority list. But I think a lot of that, again, comes down to people feeling confident about the information. I know where to find a lot of people. We know the number one reason people don't vote when they are asked is they didn't know the candidates. That's the number one response. And that's our job, right? Is to help them know who these candidates are. So plenty of work to do, but hopefully we can organize it in a way that makes it a little more easier for all of you at the local level to be effective. And thank you so much for being there. And we look forward to staying in touch.